I grabbed a sheet of beadboard for the easiest bedroom renovation ever. I cut it in half and then marked out the studs on our wall with painter's tape. I applied construction adhesive and then placed the beadboard on the walls. I added some brad nails along where the studs were to hold it in place while the glue dries. You'll notice I did paint the bottom parts of the beadboard before installing it. This was so I didn't have to worry about getting super close to the baseboard when I painted it, and it ended up working really well. I added a top MDF board and then filled all the nail holes with drywall putty, and I filled the seams between the sheets of the beadboard with caulking. When the caulking was dry on the ends, I painted the corners the same color as the wall to cover the bits of caulking that was touching the wall. And then I painted it Benjamin Moore color Lush. I also put on a 1x2 board for a top rail that I had pre-painted before the second coat. And then for the second coat, I used a brush for the trim and edges and a roller for the rest. I added some sconces, and that's how easy it was to use beadboard to create a headboard feature wall. I love the color so much, and I love how all of the natural tones came in and tied together so nicely.
I wanted to add something to the wall, so I decided on a board and batten. After measuring and leveling everything off, I cut MDF with my trusty Craig jig. I nailed the vertical board onto the wall, and once I got going, it was off to the races. Don't I wish? Once the MDF was up, I painted the top third of the wall a soft green. Thankfully, I can paint at the speed of sound, so it didn't take that long. While the paint dried, I cut and added my horizontal boards and added trim underneath. Then I added a 1x2 to the top to form a ledge. That's a lot of adding, but wow, what a difference. I ran a bead of Titebond Pro Grade Plus caulk along all the seams. Here's a pro tip: wet your finger to smooth out your caulk. For the board and batten, I chose to paint it a darker green. I believe it was called pea soup, and yes, it was exactly what it looked like. Yum. Well, we're in the home stretch now. I'm going to tile the floor, so I had to lay down a membrane first. Once I was down, I could begin tiling. I've always loved penny tile and thought it was so cool when stores would have their names spelled out in the tile, but I didn't want to spell out our name, so I chose the word welcome instead. This was a process figuring out where the pieces would fit, kind of like a puzzle. Once welcome was spelled out, it could go onto the floor. I will also admit, as I started to lay it down, I realized it was upside down, so I had to start again, but no problem. This was very, very time consuming, but just you wait. Tiles down, now it's time to grout. I also love black and white square tile. My husband helped me snap a chalk line to give me a straight edge down the middle of the hall. I mixed my thin set. Then it was tile time. I applied thin set as I laid each tile. While this is a slower process, it ensures your thin set won't dry before you lay down your tile. I also used a long level to keep my tile edges straight. 24 hours later, the thin set was dry. I applied the grout using the plastic smoother, then pushed it between each tile using a tile float. I worked on a few rows, then stopped to wipe the tiles clean of the grout. Here's a pro tip: use a smaller bucket and cut your big sponge in half. You don't need a lot of water in your bucket, but you will have to change your water often. You won't be able to perfectly clean the tile while the grout is wet, but make sure there are no lumps of grout on the tile. I had to install a transition strip from my tile to my LVF, and I chose one that matched the flooring. I just measured and cut it to length, then snapped it into place. So what do you think of my entryway now? The plain white walls are gone, the damaged wood floor is gone. I keep my front door open all the time, so if somebody is walking by our house, they can see how cool it looks.
So I ran down to the hardware store and grabbed several pieces of brick molding. My first step in creating my floor-to-ceiling headboard wall was to figure out my spacing. I used the existing small headboard as a guide, and I placed 2 of the brick molds on either side. I secured these in place using just painter's tape for now so that I could step back and make sure that they looked the way I wanted them to. Once that was done, I moved things out of the way and then I secured the brick molding using a nail gun. Now that those outer edges were in place, the next step was to figure out the center pieces. I took a good amount of time making sure that everything was evenly spaced. Once I was happy with the way that looked, I secured that in place using the nail gun as well. I used caulking and ran it down the side of the brick molding. This way, everything would look nice and finished and uniform. Once that was dry, I was able to add my paint. I applied several coats of white paint so that everything would look like it was one continuous piece. Once the several coats of paint were dry, I went ahead and moved the furniture back into the room, made the beds, and got to work on decorating. I thought it looked great, brightened up the room, gave it a little bit of visual interest, defined the theme of the area, and it really didn't cost very much at all. So I headed down to the hardware store and picked up some 1x2s. When I got back to the condo, I measured my wall and cut the wood down to size. I stained the wood. It was really easy wearing gloves and using the cloth, and I loved the dark color. I let the pieces dry and then I was ready to start. I made sure the first piece was plumb. I recently learned that vertical measurements are plumb, whereas horizontal ones are level. I made sure the first piece was plumb, and then I used a nail gun to attach it to the wall. Once I had the first piece in place, I used another piece as a spacer and then secured the next one. Using the 1x2 as a spacer made the job quick and easy. I secured all of my vertical boards in place. I ended up using 13 pieces for the wall, but you can obviously add as many or as few as you need for your space. Many slat walls end at the top of the wall, but I'd seen a few that extended onto the ceiling and I liked the way they looked. I secured the pieces on the ceiling. I abutted them against each other, but these could certainly be miter cut for a more seamless finish if desired. I also cut the slat boards so as not to obstruct the outlet. I left some room to make sure that the wood wouldn't interfere with anything bulky that needed to be plugged in. The slat wall was looking good, but I wanted to make it more unique by adding light. I used LED strip lights with a remote control. These were really easy to use because they have an adhesive backing and could be stuck directly to the wood. I removed the backing and stuck them along the wall and also up onto the ceiling pieces. I chose to run the lights in alternate lines, but of course any pattern can be used depending on personal preference. Turning it on for the first time was exciting. The lights changed color with the remote, and my favorite was the cool blue light. I added a few more things to the room, including shelves in a matching color, curtains, and a bed. I love the uniqueness that the slats and lights gave to the room. I hope this inspired you to create a cool slat wall accent of your own.
What I did was I went ahead and grabbed a blanket that's going to match exactly what I want for our room. So I'm going to lay this all out like this. Now this is going to hang over, but we'll take care of that later. And what I did was I went ahead and already pre-cut the wood that I needed. 60 inches wide and 34 inches tall. That way I was able to use one 8-foot piece of board to do two sides. So the first thing we're going to do is take our wood that we've already pre-cut. We're going to lay out the frame just like this, and we've got to secure these. You can use any kind of stapler. I have an air stapler, so I'm going to use that. And I just put them inside just like this. 3 of them will do fine, just like that. It's going to work just fine. Now that we've got the frame attached, we want to give it a little bit of strength. So definitely what you can use, just some regular little stir sticks or paint sticks. Put those at a 45-degree angle, and again, just staple them on there. That's going to give you the support that you need. Now that we got the frame done, all we got to do is take our blanket and we're going to wrap it around the frame and give it staples up and down, holding it in place. You want to make sure that you are as straight as possible with the design on the fabric. There's a little bit extra along the top and the bottom, which is fine, because what we're going to do then is we're going to cut that extra off. So we'll just keep stapling, and it doesn't have to be a lot of staples because you're not pulling at this. This is going to be a design that we're going to put on the wall. Now that we've done the top and one of the sides, go to the other side and we're going to flip that over and go ahead and staple that too. Okay, so what I've done now is flip this around because we got the top and the 2 sides, and this is the bottom, or it can be the top, it's up to you. There's extra here. So all it takes is a pair of scissors just to cut that extra off. Remember, this is going to be behind, against the wall, Doesn't have to be the most perfect cut, just as long as we got enough to staple. So we'll go ahead and just cut this off, and then what we'll do is we'll staple it all the way across the top. Then it'll be ready for fasteners. Okay, now that we've got it all stapled, it's really strong. What we're gonna do on the final is go ahead and put a wood frame around it. Then we'll put some hangers on it and we'll come back and show you the final product. So here it is, our final project. I think it turned out just great. The colors exactly matched what we want, and it looks great as a headboard. You can use it as a small art piece. Any kind of blanket or rug framed is going to look good. And we're glad you joined us this time. We can't wait to see you again on Home Talk.